Hello, it's Walter, and today we're going to be making our sheath for our machete. A lot of different ways you could do it. You can use Kydex. You can buy sheets of it online. Uh, you can make one out of fabric and even use some thinner cutting board material you can pick up at Ross or some secondhand store fairly inexpensively and make one. You can make one out of leather. I'm just going to make one out of ABS tubing. This is 2-inch diameter. Or it says 1.5, but they measure by the inside. So the ABS is actually UV resistant, so you can make it out of the white stuff, the PVC. This will hold up a little better, it's a little stronger, does a little better in the weather, and you can still paint it. If you want to paint it, just sand it with some real fine sandpaper, and then paint it whatever color you want. I'm just going to leave it black. This is where the sticker was. Best way to get that gunk off is with a little WD-40. Comes right off, no mess. Of course, if I was going to paint it, I wouldn't use WD-40, I'd use something else, because you don't want to get any oil on here that's not going to allow your paint to adhere. Okay, so the next step is I'm not going to actually put a belt loop on here per se. I am going to notch this out and leave it a little longer. You'll see why and exactly what I'm talking about when I get to that point. So I'm going to leave a little extra, maybe an inch or so right here, and then I'm going to leave another inch or so here, and I can always cut this down more. So I'm going to cut mine to right about there. Now there's a lot of things you can cut this with. They actually have cutters for this, or I'm just going to use a hacksaw in this cheap little plastic miter box that I had. This lip goes against your board so it doesn't move out of your way. I'm just going to kind of mark this. I'm going to cut through this slot, double check my length. Right about there should be pretty good. Hacksaws are notorious for cutting crooked. I'm not going to worry about it because I'm going to be adjusting this end. So right now I just want the basic length, so it doesn't have to be a straight cut. This gives me what I want. So the next step is I need to form this to my blade. Now, if you're wondering how I know this is going to be wide enough when I flatten it out for my blade to fit, it's actually going to be a little bit too wide. But if I go with a smaller piece, it's not going to be wide enough. Basically, all I do is the widest part of the blade. I just take a piece of cardboard or something, and I wrap it around my blade like this, and then I'd mark it and tape it, is generally what I would do. So I would tape this, and then all you have to do is you can take this, if it's a piece of paper, you don't want it like really stiff, and then you just form it into a cylinder, and then you go into your hardware store and make sure that this round cylinder will fit in here. And if it fits, you know when you flatten this out, this will work. Okay, now begins the fun part. This is just a cheap Harbor Freight Chicago electric power tool heat gun for indoor use only. I'm outdoor, so well. And it's just got a high and a low, so I'm going to put it on high. I'll start heating this up, and you want to heat it up evenly all the way around, so you'll have to heat it and kind of roll it. This thing will get pretty hot. You don't want to burn it, you don't want to melt it. You can touch it, and you'll feel it kind of start getting spongy. And then when it's at that point where it's soft enough to form, then what I do is I'll take my board and I'll press it flat. I'll start flattening it out, and you might have to heat it up a couple times that process. Once I get it fairly close, what I will do is I'll insert this blade when I can get it in there, and then I'll heat it up and I'll actually flatten it. And then it's a matter of just letting it cool down enough to test it. And you want a nice friction fit in here so this thing doesn't fall out. You don't want it to be going in too hard or coming out too easy. So I'll start that process and got her on high. And you start heating it up. Well, I'm going to give that a go and see what happens. The board gets pretty hot too. So there you go. You can see I've already got it kind of egg-shaped. So while it's hot, it's still hot, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to stick this in here a little bit. Try to press it a little bit more. I might have to heat it up a little more. Got to heat it up a little more. One thing too is I'll take my knife out in between heating it up because I don't want to get my blade super hot. We'll heat it up some more. Let's try that. Slide that in here. Grab my board. Okay, the other thing to be aware of when you're forming that is because of the way the handle lays on here, it causes this to sit up. So you need to get this near the edge of your table. So this needs to be at the edge and this at the edge so you can press this all the way down, or you need another board underneath this to do it. So I got to press it a little bit more. I'm going to heat it up and then I'm going to do the other one and I'll get that formed and then I'll get back to you. This is just the ABS plastic. 1.5 inch ABS, which is measured because it's pipe, is measured on the inside diameter. Tubing is a lot closer tolerance and it's measured on the outside diameter. So you can check that out if you ever have any questions about it. So when you're going to buy tubing or pipe for something, you need to know the difference so that you can get the right dimensions you're looking for. I'm not going to paint this or anything, it's pretty smooth, but I think what I want to do is wrap it with a fabric. Now, one of the things I did with mine, my old Machete Sheath, I made this a number of years ago, is I drilled a couple little holes and had a little ring put in here. This is just like a keychain ring, a split ring. It was pretty easy to put on here. I made another ring for the other end. I just need to open this up and then I can attach it here. And it's not in the way when I put my blade in and out on my sheath, so it won't be in the way. The biggest thing is some people with the ABS, the plastic or PVC, if you're trying to be quiet and branches hit it, it's going to make noise, and the D-rings kind of will flop. These little rings will make noise. They're not exactly D-rings, but you know, they'll make noise. And if you're worried about that, you can cover this with a fabric or something else. And you can also dip these in plastic coat. Like this type you could dip in plastic coat, which is what they use to dip tool handles in to cover it with a plastic, and you dip it 3 or 4 times. And then you could spread this once it's dried, put it on here. This split ring type you couldn't do that with, but you could always put tape or something around it if you were that concerned about it. I'm not. So, but I didn't want to do this for these other 2 machetes. I thought I'd do something else. Number one, here's the old sheath, which is, you know, pretty worthless. It's just cardboard and fabric. But I decided to repurpose it. Now, as you look at this machete in the sheath, you can actually see that I cut, you know, a fair amount off this blade. So this would be a nice little handier tool for a lot of purposes, because I don't live in the jungle and neither do my friends. So they don't need anything that long, and it's a couple of females, so this would actually be a little nicer for them to handle, and without it being so long, less apt to, you know, cut into their leg. So, and a really nicer, handier length for using to baton wood. So one of the first things I need to do is determine, how I want to set this up. And so for my purposes, I'm just going to have this tuck in here where these edges pretty close meet up. So let's take a look at this process. So first off, I'm not going to try to do this curve shape on here. I'm going to line this edge up over here fairly well, and then I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to mark this with a little piece of chalk. And I'm just going to come across like that. And go across like this, and then I'm going to cut this. I could always trim it more if I need to, but I think this will give me a pretty good length, and this is actually going to get folded in, so it'll make a nice little seam. Next thing I need to do is I need to be able to get this apart, because this won't fit in there. It's too big. So I just got a pair of cutters here, and I'm going to come in here and just cut this little rivet. There we go. Pull that little rivet out of there. And then in this case, I'm not going to worry about saving the thread because I'm not going to be sewing anything. So this actually pulls apart pretty readily. Pulled the rivets out and cut this thread off, and this just pull this stuff and get it out of the way. Next thing I got to do is cut this on my line. A pair of shears. It's a little tougher there. Rid of that. Now in this case, this little selvage edge here is sewn on here first, and then this was squeezed together and sewn and riveted. So when you're cutting that, you don't have to worry that this part's going to come off, because it won't. So now you can get a little bit better view of this. It'll just get sandwiched in here like this, and then this, I'll fold these edges in so these raw edges won't be exposed, and then I'll lace this together with paracord. So the next step is to mark out my holes. So I don't need these holes really close together. This is approximately about almost 5 inches from this hole to that one, and this one is 5 inches. So I'm just going to split the difference and put this at 2.5. And you could actually, if you wanted to, just eyeball it up and be pretty close. So and then I'll just split this difference here, this two and a half, and I'll make that 1 1/4, which will give me one right in the middle there, and then I'll come over here and I'll go 1 1/4. And so this is where I'm going to put my holes. So I'll mark this other side, and then I'll mark this. So on this one that I had finished already, I actually drilled these holes out with my Dremel tool and a little round burr bit, which worked pretty good. But I forgot I had this old leather hole punch, which works really good. It punches plastics, you know, unless it's real heavy duty. It wouldn't work on this, but like a cutting board material, thin cutting board material, it punches a hole through that really nice. Cardboard and paper, and it's just adjustable for the length that you want it to be to cut holes. And these are all the little chunks that are falling out from this little centerpiece. It kind of stores them, and since they're smaller, they're actually falling out through this hole, and there you could kind of see the little size that those are. Okay, so first off, I'm going to test this, and I did it on a single layer, and it makes a really nice hole in here, but I'm not sure if I can punch through the double layers at one time, because that would make it easier to line things up. Wow, it actually went through there pretty good. I'll try this again over here. Just that little bit of fabric at the very end, but made a nice little hole through there. Far nicer hole than using a drill bit or a little burr bit and a Dremel tool. So another little handy tool to have. It didn't cost that much. I got it at I don't know, a hobby store, fabric shop, Michael's or something like that, or Hobby Lobby. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and punch these holes, and then I'll show you how I'm going to do this. Okay, so for this next part, all I'm going to do is fold this over like this. And this will give me a little bit of a nice edge. Take these duck-billed glass pliers and just kind of crimp that a little bit. Fold that in, and that's how that's going to look. So you got this nice edge, and I don't even have to worry about finishing that edge. And then I'll do the same over here. I'll fold that in. And then I'll just give it a little crimp. You could even use a hammer and hammer that just to get a sharper edge on here. There. And gives me a nice little hole. So I'll do two more holes here, and probably just one down here will be enough. And I'm going to take a little lighter and just kind of melt this edge a little bit so it's not so raggedy looking, and I can kind of tuck it in out of the way. Now when I made this one, I actually made this little friction sheath for the saw, and sewed up the machete case first and then laced this on here. So this second one, I'm actually going to make this in conjunction with this and make these holes, which I already punched, so they'll line up with the holes on here, and then this side I can lace up as I do this. And there's a couple ways I might lace this a little bit differently from this one. In either case, it's still going to work, but it might save me a little bit of work in the long run here as I work on this thing. So I needed to line up these pieces of plastic, and before I did this, I actually made myself a cardboard template, because I had actually thought about using grommets on here with these little tabs that would fold over and be attached with grommet on here. But I figured this was easier, in the thought that it would create more friction on here, so I wouldn't have to really glue this on here at all if I didn't want to. But I did make a cardboard template, and then I made a paper template too, just to kind of get some of my dimensions, so that I know my saw would slide in here and give me a nice friction fit. And in case you're wondering, the dimensions on this here is, this is like 2 5/8, and I think I added I actually went to 2 7/8 of an inch wide on this piece. So yeah, pretty close, about 3 inches. And then this piece is actually about 4 1/8, and it's 7 inches long. So I cut them, and then what I need to do is I need to fold this, and you can heat this up with a heat gun and mold this around there. You know, you have to be careful you don't melt it or anything. So all I did to bend this is I just put a piece of metal plate on here and folded this up. And then once I got it folded, I just kind of pinched it down and used my little duckbill pliers to squeeze this. And then again, you can always use a hammer and just kind of tap it flat on a block of wood or something. Now, you could use a block of wood. I just happen to have this stack of metal laying around here, and this can kind of help me get my form a little bit closer to where I want it. It doesn't have to be really exact. It's just a rough version of this. And then the same thing is, I need to put this little lip on here, because if you look at this, it'll look like a little hat. So I'm going to bend this other side. First I'm going to line it up and punch all my holes through at the same time with my hole puncher, and then I'll bend this, and then we'll get to the lacing process and show you something that's kind of unique. So I have my pieces formed roughly, and now all I have to do is lace this thing all up. Now, the first thing you'll notice, if some people use paracord for shoelaces and stuff, which I don't really care for it. It's like, yeah, it's a way to carry paracord around, but if you want to use it for anything, you have to unlace your boots or shoes and then pull a strand of paracord out of here and remelt the end so it won't fray, and it just, to me, it's ridiculous. You know, you can carry paracord in a myriad of different other ways versus lacing up your boots with paracord. Years ago, what I used to do before I was using paracord is I would double lace my boots. So if I needed a length of cord, I could actually pull my laces out, cut it in half, and relace my boots so my boots wouldn't fall off my feet, and I'd have a length of cord. So that would be my suggestion. If you're going to use paracord, double it up like this and lace your boots. And then if you need that length of paracord off of either boot, you could take it out, cut the paracord in half, and still have enough paracord to lace your boots up, and then you have a length that you could use for other things. So here's the issue with paracord in trying to get it through holes is it kind of works, but not that well. So this was what I call the paracord needle. I just take my paracord, and you'll want a pair of leather gloves, and simply put, I'm just going to heat this thing up. I want to be careful I'm not going to burn it, but I want to get it hot enough to melt a little bit. And basically, I'm just going to fuse this thing together. Into a straight line, or fairly straight. You can go back as far as you want with this to give yourself a little bit longer needle if you think you need a longer needle. And you don't want to get it too hot. As you can see, I did there, I got it a little too hot, so kind of destroyed my paracord a little bit there. And part of it was this was already hot, and I didn't take that into consideration. So then from there, what you're going to do is you're going to just heat this tip. And then form it into a point. There we go. And this stuff will dry on your gloves, but once it's dry, it actually picks right off. It'll come right off. It doesn't hurt your gloves, that way you don't burn your fingers. You have yourself a little stiff paracord needle. You can take this little piece off if you want. You don't need that on there. And now you've got this basically stiff piece that's kind of like a needle. And it makes threading things way easier. So, paracord needle. I already did this side a little bit. It came out nicer. I just needed to make it a little bit longer. So, there you go. Then when you're done, you just cut this off to the length you want it and get rid of this little piece. And then you can, for eyelets, you can make this a little bit shorter. But it speeds up sewing with this. It speeds up lacing boots with it, or lacing anything where you actually made a hole and have to thread your paracord through it. Now, one of the little issues I've got going here is this is kind of sticking out. It wasn't quite long enough to tuck in there really well, but I can glue it to itself just by heating this up and then pushing it down in there until it hardens, and then this will literally glue itself back to this fabric. So and then it's glued down in there pretty good, and you can kind of, not too bad. When you cut this, if you actually separate this from this part here where I cut it and make that a little longer, then you've got more to tuck in there. The other one, it wasn't an issue. It kind of turned out that way anyways, and this one it did not. But so not a biggie, just something to be aware of. The other thing when you're working with your paracord is you're pulling it through here. I tied off here first. I laced it from this end all the way around and left a lot of slack in it, and sometimes I'd pull through some more cord through to leave a lot of slack. And then when I got down here, so actually when I tied this off, I threaded the tail down through here in between this part here, so it's down in here. And then I snugged this up pretty good, and I inserted my ABS plastic sheath, and then from there I gradually tightened everything up and worked it pretty tight. And then when I got down to this end, I took the paracord and wrapped it around here and tucked it through the laces, and then I'm bringing it down through this lace across the back, and then up and over and down through here. And once this is snugged up, what will happen is this will help lock it into the fabric. Now, same thing is do it all loose. lace the whole thing up loose in case you want to make any corrections, and then gradually work each one tighter, because if you tighten this up right here, it's going to make it really hard to work here. The other important aspect is when you're pulling the paracord through this plastic, don't pull it through quick, because this will create friction. It will actually melt this plastic and it'll melt right through it, and then you'll have to start all over again. Cutting board material, the thin flexible kind, would actually work for this type of stuff too. Now the other thing is when you're pulling your paracord through here, a lot of times as you're pulling that through, what will happen is your paracord will get this kink in it. A lot of times people working with rope and cord and stuff, as they're pulling it through something like this or through lacing something, it's going to get this little kink in here. And don't just yank it through here, especially through that, because it could rip this out. So all you need to do is just kind of roll the cordage one way or the other to get this to undo itself. You might have to pull it back over, and then as you're pulling it through, kind of spin it one way or the other, and you'll see how it'll work itself right out. So then this lays nice and it doesn't have any kinks in it. In particular, it might be more apt to do it when you're threading through the plastic, because the hole is a lot tighter hole. So I'll come through one, and come through the other. So you need to leave yourself a little bit of room to work here. I think I need to form my needle a little bit better because it's a little bit too flexible. Then I'll pull this through here. And if you look in there, you can see how this is kind of kinking. Hopefully you can see that. I'm just going to roll this the opposite to close that kink up and help this pull through here smoother. There we go. And then I'll pull that through. And then I'll try to line these up and gently pull it through here. And I'm not going to pull really hard. I'm not going to pull really fast because I don't want to melt my plastic. My finger's right there too, so I could feel it. If it's getting warm, too warm, then I'll just give it a minute to cool down. Okay. So that's that one, and then I'm just going to keep lacing it. So this is Walter and Whiskey, and the other critters coming around here. This is Tequila. Say hello. They're litter mates, brothers, and when we picked them up from Arizona small dog rescue, we couldn't bear to separate them, so we just got them both. So I've got the both of these done now. I tried putting a grommet back here, but this was too thick and it didn't turn out really good, though I kind of got it okay, and I melted this a little bit. It's no biggie. Actually, when I had this all taken apart and laid flat, would have been the time to put another grommet in here, because there really wasn't enough room because the strap, and I don't know if it would have worked, but it would have worked better than doing it this way. So I only did one like that. And I thought this grommet would be nice because it gives you a place where you can kind of hang it on a nail or hang it on a hook, or even if it's on your pack, you can kind of use this to lash onto your pack, which you still can with this one because you can't really get to the other one. And this just slides in there really nice. There we go. And with a little use, it'll wear in a little more. Here you can see that plastic that actually came from the shotgun case. The shotgun scabbard, which I'm going to reuse for something else. But the insert in there, the plastic, turned out handy for my little saw. This is just a friction fit. I left it open on the bottom so debris, dust, or whatever that you're cutting could just fall right out. So it's very easy to clean, and this just slides in and out very readily. And the other thing with this is if you wanted to carry an extra blade, you've got a little space in here, so it wouldn't take anything to take an extra blade and maybe sandwich it in a little piece of cardboard or something so it wouldn't catch on anything, and slide it down in here, and that would be a nice friction fit too. And that way you always have your saw, your machete, and an extra blade right here where it's nice and handy. So there you go. I laced this up. I just kind of did a crisscross pattern on the back. You could lace that up any way you want. The nice thing about this too is with this in here, this isn't going to fall through because the way the handle shape, it catches on here. And you could also wrap paracord, you know, from here down to here. I figured for every inch, there's like 40 inches, almost 4 feet of paracord. So if you wrapped around here, it would stay on here. You could have some extra paracord with you. The other nice thing of kind of doing this wrapped around the back is it's pretty easy to take a molly strap and unsnap it and then slide it up underneath here and be able to weave a molly strap into here, or a couple of them. And that way it gives you other options in hanging this on your pack. So this is Walter. Hope to see you next week, or maybe 2 weeks, I don't know. I've got a ton of stuff going on here, so I apologize for that. I'm trying to get stuff out as I can. Always be sure to check in with my blog, because I put other things on my website, and the little articles there, there's more information, particularly in relation to training physically with different things, different thoughts, different ideas. I don't always include them in this video. I'll give you little tips and tricks here and there sometimes, but other times it's a lot of that information is in the article, and sometimes vice versa a little bit, until I kind of figure out exactly where we're going with this, because it is kind of a journey. So hey, bear with me. Hope you're enjoying it. Hoping you're learning things. Don't forget the paracord needle, and might help you out in a sticky situation. Just trying to keep your boots laced on. Okay, so hopefully I'll see you next week.